just went live on YouTube.
important that she have that protection, and thank goodness that attorney agreed to do it, and the victim got her protective order. As far as filing them online, at least in my experience, I don't know that that would make a huge difference for our population. A lot of them wouldn't necessarily use it. They'd come into our office and then we'd tell them about it and we'd sit there and do it together. And we don't usually have a problem because we have our court services unit there on the same day that court's there, so they can call on the phone, give the court services their information, and then sign the petition when they come for the hearing. So they've worked with our people very well to make that happen. I like the YouTube training video idea for domestic violence and protective orders, because a scheduled training is not going to work for DV victims because they'd never know when they're going to need it. But if we can say, hey, check out this YouTube channel, then I think they would actually do that because that's something they're comfortable with. Someone also mentioned elder law, estate planning, and so forth, and that's absolutely non-existent where we are. And most of the people who need it couldn't afford it anyway. But where we see it is people who die intestate, and 5 siblings inherit the house and they're at war with each other. We've had criminal charges, property damage claims, trespassing claims, eviction by protective order, you name it. And they can't afford a partition suit. And there was no estate planning to say sell the house and split the proceeds. And they all have a right to live there. And sometimes there are children there who see the adults behaving this way to each other. The demographics in our county are quite disparate. We have a lot of retirees, as they mentioned, who are quite wealthy. They are not necessarily integrated into the community and don't support the legal community because they mostly have their own lawyers in Northern Virginia or Richmond, wherever they came from. So if they need estate planning, if they need something, they already have somebody available and they can pay for it. So they're not even necessarily bringing that work to our local firms. Our school-aged population, 70% live below the poverty line. And that's much more representative of what our community is, what our county is, absent that money that comes in for the waterfront property, because we have more waterfront mileage than any other county in the Commonwealth. So, and one more thing on the school issues and school disciplinary issues. That is one where kids and parents don't even know to ask, and they don't know special ed or disciplinary in front of the board. And I've seen some quite tragic things happen with kids in the disciplinary realm, disparate outcomes for different kids. And, just one attorney in there to be able to dig into it and kind of at least let them know what their rights are, and hold the school accountable and to their own rules, so they can't kind of do what they want with whatever kid comes in front of them. So those are the issues that I wanted to address, and I will make sure you have my email. And I'll be happy to talk about this at any time because I think it's a really important issue, and I'm glad that you all have this meeting.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here.
Okay.
I have questions. Do you
Okay.
mind this happening?
Please.
So 3 things came to mind. One is there are parallels, I think, between the legal profession and the medical profession in terms of serving particularly rural populations. But one of the things that I think the medical profession has been better at is using paramedics of all kinds, nurse practitioners, so on and so forth. Are there paralegals in this area? Are there things that they could do? I mean, I guess, Colleen, to some extent, you're functioning as a paralegal, but is there a way to develop non-lawyer resources that could support some of these problems?
Possibly, but most of the local lawyers' time is spent in court. The ones that don't just do real estate or, and those tend to be the firms.
Right.
So there's not a huge amount that a paralegal could do. We're not a heavy legal research area.
Right.
We're not a heavy discovery area because we have a very open relationship with our defense attorneys. There just aren't that many functions that a paralegal could necessarily take off the plate of the attorney.
Okay, that was question number 1. Question number 2, Judge, you'll forgive me for saying this. I have been in court 2 or 3 times for pro bono, like arrest record expungements. I'm not a court person, so I apologize to the entire like court-related community when I say this. But when you talk about the protective orders and how you're sitting in the back, crying inside, do you think that it would help to have some training for judges in these cases? Like the Access to Justice Commission does have a judge from every level of the court system in Virginia sitting on the commission. And I think they're doing a pretty good job with judicial education and what they refer to as like the desk books. I'm not going to get this right. Bench books. Thank you.
Yes.
Desk bench. I apologize.
Those are great books.
I did a lot of contracts work, so just so you know. But I'm wondering if that might be something that would be able to be explored or brought up in terms of that's.
I'm all about more training. I think generally our judges are very good and they get it right most of the time. I mean, and nobody's perfect. So,
and I didn't mean that they weren't getting it right.
Right.
But when you're talking about sort of if she had known either to bring up this issue or if someone had asked her that question, and I know that judges are not only supposed to appear impartial, but are supposed to be impartial. But I guess the question is everybody comfortable with where that line is? And
as far as whether the judge would be comfortable asking some of those questions that maybe a lawyer would.
you might feel like leading questions.
Yes, they tend not to. We have one juvenile court judge, but it's not Judge Jones most of the time. And he will ask questions, but I think he might think eliciting additional evidence rather than just getting more detail about the testimony.
Right.
I haven't seen him do that. So maybe that would feel like it was too much, like he was being an advocate.
Okay. All right. My last question is a comment. So in terms of people dying intestate, I used to do a lot more work than I do now listening to what other states do with pro bono activities. And there's actually a group in one of the California cities that would literally put a bunch of lawyers on a bus and send them out no, I'm not making this up. And they would have like, we're going to do your will day. And they would show up, at the county courthouse, and there would be notice a couple of weeks in advance. And it's like, if you need a simple will done, we will meet with you. We will run you through these questions and we will get this done. There you can use paralegals.
Yes. Pre-COVID, we did an annual elder law day with the
Right.
Northern Neck Bar, and we're getting that back up and going. And I think we would do it in a couple jurisdictions. That was very popular. I was never involved in that because that's not my specialty.
Understood.
So I don't know how, and maybe Ms. Lank knows more about it. I know they were well attended,
Right.
but I don't know how many of the people who needed it most were attending.
Understood. So I know that Ann Klockner's colleagues at Legal Services in Northern Virginia have a pro bono program called Wills on Wheels, where they will go to people with,
That would be great.
and so I'm wondering if it might be possible to import some lawyers from, I don't know.
There are a group of Richmond lawyers that do this too, a roadshow. So
Maybe they need to go a little
that
further
might
north.
help.
Yeah, okay, anyway.
It's beautiful
thank
out
you.
here. You're
Thank you.
welcome. Thank you guys.
It is, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Can I just say one thing?
Go ahead.
As far as informational, as far as your Virginia library system has very good resources on their website that anyone who's a member of the library can go in and they got all kinds of forms, wills, anything you can think of. They got online training from anything you can think of. So that's another resource as far as different ways people can get more information.
Thank you for that suggestion. Virginia Library System, you said? Thank you.
Yeah. It's very good. Excellent.
Thank you. Okay. Would anyone else like to be heard? Ma'am, come on down.
I have not signed in, so I need to do that, and I will provide my email address.
Excellent. Okay, please tell us your name and where you live.
My name's Kim McCartney. I live in Montrose. I've worked for Legal Aid in the Tappahannock office for about 19 years. I do intakes and I attempt to coordinate cases with pro bono attorneys.
Hi, Kim.
Yeah. I am, as part of my intake process, I gather the information about the applicant's problem and their income. I'm also the person who unfortunately has to tell them very often that we cannot help them. We don't have enough attorneys available. They're over the income guideline, which is super, super low. I know that they can't afford an attorney, but I have to tell them, no, you make too much money. And this is somebody who's struggling, who's working, who's trying to feed their kids. But they're over our guidelines because we have to take the cases that we can handle and handle well. And for that reason, we have to turn away a lot of cases that we would really like to help. I've really appreciated hearing all of the speakers here. They've had some very, very good points that I totally agree with. Some of the areas that we do not represent on because we just don't have the manpower, education, bankruptcy, adoptions, estate law, and I get calls every day for people who are just trying to do a simple transfer of property.
Mm-hmm.
The only way that I can do a transfer of property case is to suggest that we do a will. And they can, and the way that I do the wills is with my one volunteer attorney who lives in King William County and is doing cases for all three of our offices, our Culpeper office, our Fredericksburg office, and our local Tappahannock office. We have one attorney who will agree to volunteer to do those. We do have an attorney desert. You know, I heard that said. I know that we have very few, but we also have very little participation with the pro bono program. I go out from time to time trying to get folks to agree to take one case. I don't have that much time to get away from my office because I'm always taking the cases in. So it's not like I can run out and try to talk attorneys into taking cases for us, the few that are out there who haven't retired or passed away or whatever. I heard a mention of asking paralegals to assist. One of the things that I have had pounded into my head the whole time that I've worked there is that we have to be so careful that we're not giving legal advice. We're not attorneys. So that's a good point, but that's a slippery slope. Talking about the Wills on Wheels, we have done that. We've done that in the Fredericksburg office. We've done it in the Culpeper office. It is so much coordination, and we have to have attorneys willing to come in and sit down and do that, give their one day. We provide all of the backup. We provide, having the printers there, having everything ready to go, having the client having filled out everything ahead of time with all the information, so it's super easy to go. And even so, I don't have any takers. So
But pro bono volunteers
Yeah.
specifically?
pro bono volunteers specifically. A will is so easy. We have templates if it's an attorney who hasn't done a lot of that kind of thing. Ann is working on putting together a CLE so that attorneys who maybe haven't done that can get their CLE and have some more confidence in doing that kind of a case. So, we're trying to do that, but there are just so few who will take those cases.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Do you think it would be effective if to do teleservice?
To do
I mean, if you could have the client, let's just assume the clients can't figure out Zoom or whatever, have the client in your office, could they be serviced? I assume they could be serviced remotely by an attorney, right? Do they need to be in the same room?
They don't need to be in the same room. We could do that kind of thing if we can get attorneys from outside the area who are willing to help, if they're aware that there's this area that has so few. We could probably work that out or have them come into our office. I will sit down with them.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have a lot of tech savvy people who are coming in at our income guidelines who can navigate that. But
That's what I
yes.
was assuming. That's why I said maybe from
Right.
your office,
From
if
our
you could
office.
set that
Right.
up.
Right. There again, I'm one person in an office of 4. The attorneys are generally in court. It's not that I mind doing that. I would love to do that. As a matter of fact, the one attorney who does the cases for us, I do his typing because he's retired.
Mhm.
And so for all those cases that come through, I'm literally sitting there. He writes it up. I type it. We're doing our best. But adoption specifically, that was mentioned. I've had people come in who, somebody here mentioned, I think you mentioned grandparents who are raising their grandchildren. I've had people come into me looking for help with an adoption. Their grandchild is there, the parents have agreed to it, but we can't do adoptions because we're not set up to do adoptions, and it would help benefit this child. And there's this child that I'm looking at the grandmother and saying, no, I'm sorry, I've known you for 10 years, but I can't help you with your grandchild. It's heartbreaking, honestly.
Yeah.
But I appreciate that you're here and listening, and thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? Please come down.
Please.
Take it out of the way.
My name is Diane Lang. I think you have my email address.
Yes, we do.
I'm going to tell my story like Aaron did. I opened up my law office the same month I went on Medicare. I had practiced, I was big law in Baltimore. Went to Canada, was in-house counsel for a lot of years. Came back here because my folks left me their house. And we said, well, let's move back to Virginia. Maybe it's time. I'd never done the kind of law I'm doing now. If I started out doing this law, I would be burned out. I would have been burned out 30 years ago. We have a real crisis. We have a real crisis in the family law area here. You can't, woman comes in who works at McDonald's, who's in an abusive relationship, and she wants to hire you for custody visitation. You have to say, you can't afford me, but maybe I'll get appointed GAL. And that's often what I tell, I do about 80% of my work is guardian ad litem work. But we're really short on guardians ad litem now. And the way the state looks at things, guardians ad litem cannot job out stuff. They're supposed to do it all themselves, whether it be requesting medical records or talking to the principal at school. It's all supposed to be the GAL herself or himself who's doing that, which is absurd. There is no reason why I should have to devote my time to write a medical records request to VCU. It's a waste of my time. I use my staff work, but because I am in the retirement age, I can afford to pay my staff even with the pittance that I get from my guardian ad litem work. We need people who can represent people in divorces. We need people who can be guardians ad litem, and unlike other areas, you can't bust people in to be a GAL. They gotta be able to do home visits. They gotta be local. They gotta know the teachers to be able to figure out what's going on. But there are ways, I think, that we could go a whole lot more self-service. When I was in Maryland, I assume they still do this, they have a self-serve divorce. If there's no property, no kids, you can go fill out a form and get divorced. It's very, very easy. Why can't we do it here? I mean, I do a ton of pro bono stuff, some through legal aid, some just under the table. But just to get a simple divorce, you cannot do it yourself here. You cannot do a divorce by yourself in Virginia, I don't think. I often refer people to the legal aid website for Virginia. They have got fantastic information. I second what everybody's saying about protective orders. I have a case where it's effectively pro bono. I'm representing a woman on a protective order for her daughter. I bet I spent 3 hours researching, and Mr. Briggs can talk about this too. the protective order statutes are almost impenetrable. You've got protective orders for family abuse. You got protective orders for child abuse. You got protective orders that are in GDC. You got protective orders that are in JDR. I can't keep them all straight. I do think that in addition to having some more self-serve stuff, we have got to deputize paraprofessionals who can help people in court. I would love, Colleen Jordan from The Haven was talking about how frustrated she is in court. I would love her to be able to sit next to her client and say, don't forget to mention this. Don't forget to mention that. She can't. I mean, we have, we're this specialized field of people that, don't anybody else dare talk to the court. There's no reason that paraprofessionals cannot draft simple wills, cannot represent folks in protective orders. Yes, they need some skill and training and knowledge of the law, but they don't have to be lawyers. Represent people in protective orders, write up deeds and record the deeds without having to worry about having a lawyer. I think what David said earlier about we have a third fewer people taking the Virginia bar today than did 10 years ago. That is friggin' scary.
2/3 fewer.
2/3. That is really scary. That doesn't bode well for the Northern Neck. But if we can train others they got to stay in their lane, but to be of assistance to these people who need help. I just think there's a lot simply we can do. I echo people. This area is not super on technology. It's frustrating. Another thing the bar might look at is trying to get people like me who, I know we have got retired lawyers in the Northern Neck. And I have talked to some and said, hey, come back and do this or that. But maybe there has to be more of an outreach for that. Yes, we need younger lawyers. Absolutely. Aaron should not be basically the youngest person in the bar. But some of us old fogies are still capable of doing some stuff too. And maybe we could channel them into discrete areas to help out. But financially, I know that rack rates around here are much lower than they are in Fredericksburg or Richmond, but still, even at $200 an hour, how many people can afford that? They simply can't afford it. So we have a crisis. We got to figure out a way to do it, and that's why I'm glad you're here.
Thank you so much. Yes, please go ahead.
No, I
Anyone else? Come on down, sir.
Good evening. I'm Tom Savage. I live in Colonial Beach now. I was a trial lawyer in Fredericksburg for about 35 years. And when I moved to Colonial Beach, I dropped all the heavy litigation and then took on the role as a guardian ad litem. So I've been a guardian ad litem in the Commonwealth for a total of about 42 years. I finished up my last case last January, and because my wife told me at 68 years of age, I'm too old to work that hard. Unlike Diane, who has more energy than I do. I'm currently no longer a guardian ad litem. I'm a substitute judge for the 15th Circuit and statewide, but I primarily sit in courts in the 15th Circuit on here. A lot of what has been said by the other speakers, I'm going to try not to replicate. I'll just comment on something that Ms. Hapgood said about the small numbers of attorneys in Northumberland. I sit in court cases from Stafford all the way down to Northumberland, and in the Northern Neck, it's the same five faces you see in every courtroom, not just in Northumberland, but there's Diane, there was me before I bailed out on her. There are two or three other attorneys, and it's the same faces in the same courtrooms almost exclusively. I've retired from that line of work, and another attorney, I think that maybe Ms. Hepgood mentioned, recently also left that field, I believe. So we're probably down to less than a handful of attorneys that do guardian ad litem work, and probably also court-appointed work on the criminal side as well. So once you all, or whoever is going to make the determination of where exactly the legal deserts are, I have no doubt that we're going to qualify, probably Southwest Virginia as well. So anyway, one thought that I said, well, how do you turn this around? As I was driving down here from Colonial Beach, I thought, well, we need to get more younger lawyers down here. I agree that the younger lawyers with children generally can't make a living on guardian ad litem fees or court-appointed attorneys' fees. Also, too, we don't have huge population bases in the Northern Neck. But my thought is that for the last 40 years, I see in our bar publications, it used to be called something else, but it's now called Judges and Lawyers Assistance Program, where we're educating the judges and the lawyers about their substance abuse issues and help for them. Maybe if we could do a similar thing in the bar publications, basically a promotional ad for the Northern Neck, for Southwestern Virginia. I think some of the other speakers have spoken on it, but I just did a short list after having worked in Fredericksburg, which many, many people consider Northern Virginia now. I don't. But having been there and compared it to practice here, there's a lot to draw, I believe, as one of the speakers said, there's a lot to draw younger lawyers here. No traffic. The traffic up there brings people to handguns out the windows at each other. I haven't had that happen to me since I moved here. No traffic. Everybody, not everybody, but 95% of the people in the court system are civil to one another. We have understanding judges. They realize that you can't be in Tappahannock at 9 and down in Northumberland by 11. Sometimes we have to give and wait a bit there. We've got wonderful clerks. When I was a guardian ad litem, one of the clerks in my district gave me corn. I never got corn in Spotsylvania County. There's low crime rate down here. That may not bring many criminal lawyers down this way, but to live here as a young lawyer, low crime rate, beautiful environment, lots of water, relatively low cost of living. I realize there are a lot of people that cannot afford much, but compared to Fredericksburg or Fairfax, it is a relatively low cost of living. So if we could put in the bar publications addressed to all of the lawyers, but primarily the younger ones, is that this is a great place to live. It's a great place to work. It's a great place to develop a practice, not just for your younger years, but on into your middle age and older years as well. So that's the solution. Thank you.
I'd like to say one thing while you're there. Judge, we have a lot of gangs in the rural area. It's causing problems. So this is something that really needs to be corrected. I don't know how, but I taught school for a number of years and I work with young kids. A lot of these young kids are with the grandparents, and grandparents are not disciplined like they should, and the kids are running wild. We got 2 or 3 gangs in Northumberland County where they're shooting at each other's cars. So this is not good at all. So
that's true. Thank you for bringing that up. And thank you for educating Judge Jones. You did an excellent job. Any other questions?
You'd be willing to write an article for the bar?
I would consider it. Certainly there are other better journalists than I, but I certainly would consider helping.
There was an ad run by an attorney in Tazewell that was offering reduced cost or free office space for attorneys that wanted to move to that area. And our executive director reached out to that attorney to say thank you. It was in our magazine. And I think his idea was that we should be doing more of that kind of thing around the Commonwealth. And, we often talk about the legal deserts, but I think it was President York that said maybe we should start calling them legal opportunity zones. And, there might be a way to sort of do a regular legal opportunity zone highlight, not only in the magazine, but maybe to YLC members and their publication that goes out on a quarterly basis. I think it actually may go out more often than that. So We just need volunteers that understand, know, and love the area to provide the content, and we're more than happy to get the word out.
All right, and you do have my email address.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? No, come on down, please.
My name is Brianna Weiner. I'm an attorney here in Virginia, but I'm also licensed in Tennessee and Texas. I don't live in Virginia full time, but I spend a lot of time here. So I guess I am one of the young attorneys that has been spoken about. And sadly, I don't live here in the Northern Neck, but I have a lot of interest in the well-being of this community. So as someone that has sort of recently graduated from law school and then took the bar as one of the 1/3 that still takes the Virginia bar, we're graduating from law school less, we're going to law school less, we're graduating from law school less are taking the Virginia bar, and more are graduating with terrible debt and student loans. So to have people move to an area where the opportunities for large salaries are just not there can seem like a silly ask. I think that, well, I went to law school in Tennessee, and one thing that actually struck me about my law school was the fact that their whole mission was to produce lawyers that would go out into the Appalachian area and serve in those areas, which are also some zones of opportunity for lawyers. And so I think that partnering with the law schools and kind of sharing this need, but also sharing the opportunity is really important, because the Northern Neck, really, I think the closest law schools are Richmond,
Tidewater.
Tidewater area. And a lot of those people don't even stay in those areas to start their legal career. But I think that one of the things, and some other people have mentioned, utilizing more remote hearings, because if we can't bring young people here, or any lawyer, being able to say, okay, stay where you are, but you still can help an area from wherever you may find yourself. I think that can be really, really useful. And I understand some opportunities. One woman was mentioning guardians ad litem. I was a guardian ad litem when I lived in Texas, and I'm not sure if this is still the case, but at one point I believe Virginia guardian ad litems had to be attorneys. Is that still okay? So that limits right there. When I was in Texas, I happened to be an attorney, but that's not the case there. Guardians ad litem do not have to be attorneys, and even then they were struggling to find people, but at least they had the whole public instead of this small sector of people with JDs. So I think that could be one solution for that, is opening that opportunity up. This is not a problem that is unique to Virginia. I know that because I'm still active in both the Tennessee and Texas bars, and I think it's really important to not feel like we need to isolate and figure this problem out just as Virginians, because this is a nationwide problem. We need to be figuring out, what are the other states doing? How are they tackling it? And maybe that's through the ABA, or just some other connections that we have with other states. I know that the Virginia State Bar Young Lawyers Conference did do a clinic where we went out to Southwest Virginia and did a wills, I'm pretty sure it was a wills clinic. And I think utilizing that more and maybe saying, partnering with some of the local attorneys here and say, if we brought down some people, could you host them for a night? And so we could have a 2-day experience. So then people aren't put out trying to figure out hotels while we're here, but we could increase our impact by having it be a 2-day, maybe a full weekend sort of thing. I really think that in order to attract young lawyers, it has to come down to the mentorship. I know so many people from my law school who, they wanted to serve this mission of going out into the Appalachian or other areas that don't have a lot of law offices. And to me, that was a very scary thing. I can't imagine going out and after law school and, hanging my own shingle and having people's lives, their money, in my hands. But if you have mentorship, then you gain the confidence to do things. You have someone to turn to say, this is my first one I've ever done of whatever it is. Can you just look it over? So as long as the attorneys that are still here are willing to pitch in and be mentors, that will attract people. Because I think that one of the things that you miss in big law, and I do work as corporate counsel, is the mentorship. So with the inactive attorneys that are still in the area, maybe we find a way that maybe they don't want to be active again. Maybe they don't want to pay, renew their membership to be active. But maybe there's a way to keep them as inactive status, but have them be able to help in other capacities. I think that's about it. I know that the Virginia Bar Association has task forces on the decline of bar takers. And I know that the state bar also has similar task forces. And I think that is a good partnership that this committee can also have, because ultimately, if we have less people taking the bar nationwide, less taking the bar in Virginia, we're not going to have a large pool to come down to the Northern Neck at all. So, thank you.
Let me ask a quick question. Did you actually sit for the full Virginia bar?
I was already licensed in Tennessee, so I only had to take the Virginia portion of the bar. But it was shocking how empty that room was. It was.
Was it
sad.
February or July?
It was the February bar.
Oh.
It was a February bar, so it's not the most popular.
Right.
But I do know people that took the February bar that said it was just about as sad. Yes.
What brought you back to Virginia? Family.
Yes, definitely. I mean, being a Virginia attorney was really my big goal. The other two were just extra credit. But I knew that Virginia, we can be sort of sticks in the mud about change.
Yeah.
Truly. Yeah. But
Out of the mouths of babes.
right. And I knew that Virginia as a whole needs more young attorneys. And, one of the things that is brought up with this task force is the fact that Virginia is not part of the uniform bar exam, which I could go on for ages about. But that's a huge thing that sets Virginia apart in a very negative way. Because if you have the potential for 42 doors to be open to you by taking one exam, why would you take one exam for the potential of one door open? It just doesn't make sense. So that's something I'm advocating for separately, but that's also kind of ties back to this, is what opportunities is Virginia putting out that makes us unique and draws people in?
To what extent do you think it might help to have some sort of loan forgiveness program for young attorneys practicing in, whatever might be designated as a desert? I don't know if they do it with the Commonwealth's attorneys. I know some of the legal aid programs have some of that, although is it still $5,000 a year?
It's $7,000 now in Virginia, and there's also federal money, federal forgiveness.
Mm-hmm. I think that could be huge, because also a lot of the areas that other folks have talked about, family law, for example, that's not a public service category, but it's still an area of huge need. And so someone that wants to practice family law, they don't have access to that sort of loan forgiveness, and it would be great if they could.
I keep going back to medical models, but I know a guy who was an anesthesiology nurse in Frederick, Maryland, and he really wanted to go to medical school. And West Virginia said to him, if you come to medical school at West Virginia University and practice in a rural area for 6 years, it's almost like ROTC, right?
Right.
You go free and you're done. It didn't make sense for him because he wasn't going to make that much more than he did as an anesthesiology nurse. But I guess that's another potential model. And by the time you spent 6 years in the community, maybe you're really vested in it.
Right? It could be a stipend after someone graduates law school or during law school, saying, if you come to an area like the Northern Neck and work, we will pay off your student loans if you're here for a certain period of time. Obviously, they're going to fall in love with it and stay longer. But if they do not meet those terms, they pay back that money or something like that. Some sort of contingency contract like that, I think could be great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, last call.
I have a question for the
Good evening.
Good evening.
evening.
All right, my name is Marcel Jones. You may have my my email address. I signed up late this afternoon.
Thank you.
All right. You probably, a lot of people refer to me already as a judge. So I've been a judge for about 4 years, and I live in Spotsylvania County. But as Mr. Long has stated, I grew up and graduated from Northumberland County, so down here in the rural area. So I guess I have a unique perspective, to a certain extent, as far as being a past resident of the Northern Neck and now living in Spotsylvania County, which is more suburban area. And I also have an even more unique perspective from the bench, where I sit in 7 different jurisdictions in a given month. So I travel around from the Stafford, Spotsylvania, Caroline County, King George area, all the way down to the Northern Neck, Northumberland, Westmoreland, Lancaster. I think it's a perfect fit for me because I have those 2 perspectives from being in the rural area as well as being in the suburban area. And so it works perfectly for me as far as the travel. Now from the bench, I guess what I see are those pro se parties. That's been talked about a lot today, and where they don't have the legal knowledge. Now, all they are worried about is, I need protection. When we talk protective order, something happened last night, my life was in danger, and I need to do something. They're not thinking about the legal terms of protective order, reasonable apprehension of bodily harm. All the legal terms that we use on a daily basis. So that's not what they're thinking about when they come into court. And as judges, as stated before, we're not their advocates. We have to be impartial, of course. But in that preliminary ex parte hearing, we can guide them a little bit. Because it's one party there at that point in time. But then when you have the final protective order hearing, where there are usually 2 parties, of course we have to give that air of impartiality while we're sitting there. And oftentimes neither party, we're talking about the rural areas, neither party has an attorney to represent them. And even worse, one party has an attorney and the other party does not have an attorney. So it's a great disadvantage to the party that does not have an attorney in those situations. But at the same time, technically both parties are bound by the rules of evidence, so forth, and so on. And that so you see it more down in the Northern Neck area. probably 90% of the cases that come before me, that's a civil matter or pro se. So that's a huge number. And when I start court, I try to just set the groundwork as far as, okay, this is what we're going to do. You go first, you go second. This is what you need to do. This is what I need to hear. This is what I need to find, and things of that nature. So they have some sort of groundwork of what they need to present. And sometimes during the case, because a pro se, in a custody type case, they may testify for 2 minutes and that's it. And they feel that they've proved their case or whatever they wanted to present. So I may have to ask additional questions, get more information out. But it would definitely do them some service, of course, if they had an attorney or at least some sort of advice, even if it's free advice, even if the attorney cannot go into court with them. Even if this is a conversation on the phone prior to, whether it's 30 minutes, 15 minutes, to give them some advice, to give them some sort of comfort as far as going into court, pro se, without an attorney, even if the attorney cannot be present in court. I heard a lot of speaking regarding remote hearings. That would be great if the courtrooms were set up, technically. But even when you have remote hearings, it can be difficult at times where if you have a party in one place and you have an attorney in another place, and sometimes the individuals even talk over each other, and it can be very disruptive, and at times it sometimes can be difficult to control everyone. But I've had a case where I had individual on the phone, or two individuals on the phone, in the same hearing, and they're enough fussing and cursing at each other on the phone. So it's difficult to bring that to order, and how I conduct order. I show respect to everyone, but I expect everyone to show respect to the court, and just to have some sort of structure and order in the court so it won't get out of hand. But attorneys definitely, I would have probably come back down to the Northern Neck if I wasn't married to a lady that was not from the Northern Neck. So it's difficult for someone that's not from the Northern Neck to come to the Northern Neck. Something has to definitely draw them. So I think it definitely needs to be some incentives. And it may have to be at the legislative level where they have to pass, certain laws and put it in the budget, to provide those incentives, especially for court-appointed counsel, guardian ad litems, where whether or not you're living in that jurisdiction, if you travel to that jurisdiction, or if you live in that jurisdiction, there should be some sort of incentive or subsidy, in those type of situations. Because it is difficult. I mean, as stated before, I'm not going to reiterate everything that's been said today, but a lot of good points and a lot of what I see from the bench, which is different than Northern Neck, which is different from the Fredericksburg, Spotsylvania County area, where a lot more individuals come to court with an attorney, and also there's more services, funded services for individuals that may need those services as well. I don't think the Northern Neck, unfortunately, have all the services, not even talking about legal services, just other services, collateral services, other stakeholders that may help those individuals. But a lot of good points were made today, and that's what we're seeing from the bench as well. And that's what I experienced, to a certain extent, as a practicing attorney before I became a judge. So, any questions?
Did you know you wanted to go to law school when you were in high school?
I did not. When I was in high school, I wanted to go into business, and I went to University of Richmond in college. I didn't know until maybe my junior year. I changed my business degree to education and sports administration. So I was going to be a PE teacher, like Mr. Long, until my junior year. So, not many people know that you don't have to go into political science to be an attorney. I think that's the misconception, that you have to go into that type of field. But my degree was in education and sports administration before I went to law school. Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
No, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Good job.
My name is Dawn Moore, and I do not have a law degree.
Congratulations.
I am the president of the NAACP in Middlesex. I heard, we deal with a lot of the issues that I heard today, but one main issue that I really didn't hear that we have dealt with a lot is civil, or not really civil, a lot of employment issues. We have a lot of discrimination issues. I have one case that, we are not lawyers. At one time, the NAACP was full of lawyers. We are struggling to get that back at this point. Now that it's a major election year, all of a sudden we got a lot of people crawling out of the woodwork, but once the election is over, they're all gone. But I sat with this lady and we called almost everybody we could in the state of Virginia. She filled out the forms with the ACLU. She went to legal aid. They just did not have the time or resources to help her. We were calling lawyers in DC and Maryland, but they had to be able to practice in Virginia. So ultimately, she did not get the help that she really needed to get, and she would have won her case. But of course, nobody wants to take on the U.S. Postal Service either. Nobody wants to take on the schools. The school actually had the juvenile justice system come in and do a presentation to our kids, then called the parents in when we called irate when our kids came home and said they would be arrested. So when we went to the training with the juvenile justice system, I was, needless to say, not very professional when we walked out of that room, because looking at our demographic, there was a divide. This group of children were being treated this way, and this group of children were being treated this way. I even see it in our justice system. For you to have a white deputy get nothing and a black deputy get the book thrown at him for lesser than what the white deputy did, I find it totally in the courtroom. And we're trying to get a meeting with our local judge. We do have one Commonwealth Attorney office. He has just been approved to get an assistant because the deputies are going to get body cams finally. But that person is going to be enamored with the body cam footage. So we're still down to basically a one Commonwealth office. And I just don't see the fairness. But we have been reaching out to organizations in our county. We have been working with a lot of them, but we don't have lawyers. We have like 3 or 4 old lawyers. I don't have time for you. I don't have time for you. Oh no, we're not even going to mess with that. So we really don't have what our community needs. And we do have a lot of children being charged criminally through the school that should not be getting charged. So it is a big downside for us. And it's a block, and it's hard because you reach out to the other civic organizations, but they don't have lawyers either. We have a victim witness advocate, but I mean, she's working 24 hours and she's working major projects, so it's a big downfall. And I wish there was a way that everybody could come together and work together. We are always, in our community, the NAACP is always there to help wherever and however we can. So I don't know, but That's where we see our problems.
I don't think I caught your exact location.
Middlesex.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
What's the festival?
Thank you all. I think we've had a great wealth of information and suggestions and clearly desire for change and improvements. And this is the first of 7 hearings that we're doing, probably maybe more, around the state to gather information from legal desert communities as well as metropolitan communities. And our timetable is to have recommendations that we present to the state bar and to the public next spring. And so we have a lot of work to do. And I've taken a lot of notes on ideas that I want to follow up on. We're also looking at what other states do, and that's a very valuable source of ideas for us as well. And you can continue to follow what we do on the state bar websites. And if you search for what, you'll find.
EGAD-VA, so EGAD-VA, VSB, will bring you to our study committee page. 2 really important things on there, in addition to the YouTube channel where we'll be streaming all of these public hearings. We have surveys where you can provide feedback. So it's separate from the information that you provided to register for this event. It's actually a part of the study committee's information gathering process. We have an all attorney survey, which is designed for any Virginia attorney to fill out and just give us perspectives on how you chose where you are practicing. And then we have a legal opportunity zone survey. Right now, we've identified 9 circuits that appear to be legal opportunity zones just based on the number of attorneys that are there and the growth of the Commonwealth. They're not matching. But I suspect through this process, we're going to discover that there are additional locations. So if you are in one of those circuits, and you're an attorney, I definitely would encourage you to fill out the legal opportunity zone survey. And then if you are a non-attorney, please fill out the legal opportunity zone survey, because it just gives us feedback on the legal needs you or the people that you serve have faced. And we want to know how that's impacted you. So go to our website for all of those resources. And then there's also flyers for the public and for attorneys or legal professionals to take on your way out. And feel free to photocopy those and share them as you see fit.
There's also a link on the page for our YouTube channel where you can watch previous meetings, watch future hearings. This will be posted in a few days as well. Jamie?
If you'll make sure to sign up on the registration, I can send the link out for that website to everyone who gives us their email address.
Perfect. That's great.
Okay.
Thank you.
I want to thank Ann Klockner from Legal Aid Works and thank Jamie for helping us make this work. Without Ann, we literally wouldn't be here.
Great, so yeah, thank you. We do have some refreshments available if you'd like to have something.
And feel free to take some home.
Yes.
Take anything home and stay in touch.
2 paper plates make a clamshell. I couldn't find any clamshells.
All right. Thank you.